I don't think any community exists in isolation. If you live with your neighbors, you know that you're not secure unless your neighbor is secure. And for us, that means knowing what's happening over the fence, what's happening to the next door, what's happening in your nearest town, what's happening in your county. And we started interacting with our county very up close and personal to let them know that we're responsible citizens, and we believe in you, and we believe in helping each other. And if that's swapping seeds or swapping chickens or swapping books or swapping knowledge, we're more than happy to do that. And we were able to get across these points about green living, about how you live more closely with nature, following the patterns, getting off of the exponential growth curves and into something more stable, more steady state. The problem is you have to have a community of trust. You have to have agreements among the people to be watching out for every child. And that trust is an invisible architecture. It's the invisible architecture of community. So how do you build that? Well, there's lots of techniques, but what we do here at the farm in Tennessee is one of those, which is have meetings, talk, have parties that we go together. We have generations now of 4 generations living here, and they all like the same music at parties. How about that? It gets to a level of agreement where you can have fun together, and having community gardens, having opportunities of business incubators to help one another out. Helping each other with connections and roof raisings and things like that. All of those add to the invisible architecture that makes a community strong. We're living in a building here which is kind of an organic building, and I say that in the same way you think of organic food. This is coming entirely from natural materials as much as possible. I mean, there's a few artificial materials in here, a little bit of steel and concrete where necessary. But for the most part, it's biodegradable. If you walk away from this building, it's going to go back into the earth and it's going to leave no toxic trace. The building itself is insulated with straw, so this is what keeps us warm in the winter and cool in the summer. It's plastered, the interiors, with a mix of clay and sand and lime and biochar. Biochar is wood that's been turned into charcoal, burned in the absence of oxygen, and then put into the plaster so that it serves as a filter, an air filter. It takes pollen and mold spores out of the air, puts them into storage in the wall where they bond with the lime and the clay to form a hard rock-like plaster, but they are constantly filtering the air in the room to take out anything that might be toxic. When you're doing passive solar construction, you're trying to follow the patterns of nature to provide your energy needs, so heating, cooling, electrical, and so forth. So here we have a passive solar greenhouse which gives us vegetables and heat in the winter, and then we also have our solar cells that provide electricity, and we have hot water heaters that provide showers and so forth. So we're getting all of that from the sun directly rather than running through a utility at some distance away and paying an electric bill. Outdoor showers, which are solar powered, they're a parabolic trough that funnels the light, the sunlight, onto an old propane tank and heats it up to scalding temperatures. You have to have a steam valve on there just to make sure it doesn't get too hot. We can get about 30 showers a day off of this. And the gray water leaves, the soap and the rinse water, it leaves and goes into a constructed wetlands just behind. So it filters out through the plants and becomes mosquito-proof and able to put the nutrients of the soaps in your own body back into the ground. You could follow the local pattern of nature and how nature deals with waste, which is to say there's no such thing as waste. Waste is a verb, not a noun. It's something we do. And so actually what we do here is we take the waste, the gray water and black water that comes from the eco-hostel, and it comes in here and goes through a succession of stages over 11,000 square feet of constructed wetlands. And all of these plants have a particular function. There's aerobic lagoons and anaerobic lagoons and reed beds and gravel flows and flow forms. And as it moves through this system, it's cleaning the water to a standard of treatment that's better than any treatment that you get at a sewage treatment plant in a city. My mother grew up in Sioux City, Iowa, graduated from the university and went to work at Swift and Company in Chicago, where she met my father, who was a ad executive or public relations executive for Swift. And the two of them married and went to relocate in Honolulu, working initially for Swift and then as public relations for the entire emerging territory. And then some years after that, Ding Darling came. About the time I was about a year old, Ding came down to Hawaii for a year or more. And my father had known him up in Chicago, and my mother had the Sioux City connection, and eventually they got to be quite good friends. Ding was there in a lot of events with my father in Honolulu, and he had a lot of Ding Darling paraphernalia from his association over the years. So I grew up surrounded by Ding Darling art. There was a large etching on a wall of a room in my house. As a child, I had an artistic talent, and my father encouraged that. And one of the books he gave me was the illustrations of Ding Darling, which I probably had an influence on my art. But I was an avid environmentalist, outdoorsman, conservation person. I love to hike in the mountains and canoe and travel to lakes and spend my summers outdoors. And I actually liked living outdoors more than living indoors. My parents could tell you I lived in a treehouse most of the summer months. Whenever it was good enough, I'd get out there and live. So that was my association and my great benefit of growing up surrounded by and influenced by Ding Darling.